All right, welcome everybody to today's webinar. We're super psyched. Title is, Are You Ready for Account-Based Everything? 5 focus areas hold the answer. I didn't pick the title. It's not too bad of a title, but as we let people jump into the session here, we're going to play a very short video. Then I'm going to jump right into the agenda and introduce our guest speakers.
Hey, I'm Steve Brain. I'm a VP of Engineering here at Inside Sales. I'm really focused on building out our platform engineering organization and really building on the platform for the next generation of growth for InsideSales.com. What Inside Sales is about is helping sales teams sell more, and it's doing that by disrupting how they sell, changing the way they approach it, using machine learning, using computers to actually help humans do a better job than they could ever do themselves in the sales process. So I've lived all over the world. I've got a British passport. I grew up in the UK. We looked at where we wanted to live next and where we wanted to bring our kids up, and we chose Park City, Utah. So a big part about what I love about Utah is being able to not wait till the weekend to ski or mountain bike. Salt Lake is what everyone seems to think Denver is. You can have world-class access to skiing, mountain biking, all kinds of things without sitting in traffic. So one of the exciting things that's happening in Utah is the transformation of the tech industry here. We've got something, we're calling Silicon Slopes. Obviously Inside Sales is doing great, but there's a number of other major startups really springing up. I'm excited to see us become another tech center alongside some of the ones with Seattle, Austin, Bay Area.
All right.
It's exciting to see that transformation happen here in Utah. So part of what really attracts me to Inside Sales is the point the company's at in its journey. What I've been super impressed.
First, some house cleaning items. This session's going to last about 45 minutes, depending on how much time we all take here. We will definitely get to a Q&A. Feel free to use your Q&A box before that. In fact, I'd love for you to open that up. You'll see it in your bottom section. It says Q&A. Tell me your name and where you're from, just so we can get people used to asking questions. The more informal this can be, always the better. Also, feel free to use hashtag Inside Sales Webinar. We'll be watching that. This session is recorded. At the end of the show, I'll tell you how to access it, but we will email you as the session ends. One quick plug. We do have a Sales Acceleration podcast from InsideSales.com. Feel free to come and listen. We do 2 episodes a week. It is so fun. Trish and myself and Matt were just talking about it. I'm a chatterbox. Talking to people about all things sales acceleration is never a bad thing. Good. Looks like we got some people joining here. Jacob from Prototype, John from Cambridge, Aline. Who else we got here? We got a couple Johns. Good. It looks like you got the Q&A box. Let's go ahead and introduce our esteemed guests today. I'll maybe just introduce myself first, and then Trish and Matt, I'll let you two do the honors of introducing yourselves. So I'm Gabe Larsen. I run what we call our Inside Sales Labs. Been doing some fun stuff here, trying to test out different approaches and strategies around our sales acceleration platform. By all means, please do grab me on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'll be offended if you don't. Trish, over to you.
Hi, I'm Trish Bertuzzi. I'm the author of the Sales Development Playbook, and I'm also the CEO of the Bridge Group, Inc., the largest inside sales consulting firm in North America.
And hi, my name is Matt Heinz. I'm the president of Heinz Marketing. We are a B2B marketing consulting firm based out of Seattle, and super excited to be here. Love working with the InsideSales.com team. Just super good people, and Trish is the best in the business, so very excited to be on a presentation with her as well.
Yeah, I must admit, I think both Matt and Trish have been around InsideSales.com, the Inside Sales.com family for a long time, so we appreciate you both joining. Let's dive into the meat here. Real quick agenda. We are going to be talking about account-based everything. A lot of different terms out there for this topic, and we want to start this presentation and see if we can't get a little clearer on what we mean when we start saying account-based, etc. I'm going to do the intro and hit the why and what. Then I'm going to turn it over to Matt from Heinz, and he's going to talk about how you actually integrate marketing and sales. So he'll get a little more into the how, and then Trish is going to wrap us up talking about account-based revenue and really get into the numbers and the math of it all. By the end, I think you're going to have a very clear picture of this chaotic world of account-based and hopefully the why, the what, and the how as we dive into it. So with that, we wanted to start with this poll question. I'm going to turn it over to Trish, and maybe, Trish, you can talk to us a little bit about the difference of account-centric versus account-based strategies.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really interesting. So lots of people are talking about account-based, whether it's account-based marketing, sales development, account-based everything, you name it. And account-based is a well-thought-out, cohesive strategy that incorporates all aspects of an organization into going after some very specific accounts with which to generate revenue. That's account-based. Account-centric is probably more predominant, but we shall see. But that's when companies have their sales organizations pick a set number of accounts to go after, and they focus their sales and sales development efforts at going after those specific accounts. So there's account-centric, which is sort of just smart, intelligent, outbound, and then there's account-based, which is a super strategic strategy. And we want to know which one is your organization doing. So ready, go.
So as people fill that out, Trish, and we'll give them just 5 or 10 more seconds here. You're out on the road. You even said before we jumped on, the New Year's resolution coming next year is a little less on the road. But you're out there enough. What do you expect in this answer? I mean, is most of the market more centric or more based?
My guess is that most people are account-centric, and they think they're account-based. But don't forget, this is an evolving area. We are still in the innovator early adopter stage with real account-based strategy. So that's going to be my guess.
All righty.
The data will tell.
Let's see. The results say, let's see, account-centric. So we've got 69% saying they're account. I think that's true. Matt, I mean, you're also working with a lot of sales and marketing. Is that surprised that it came out to be more account-centric than account-based?
Yeah, I'm not surprised by this, given the definitions that Trish gave. I honestly think a lot of organizations, if you put a third option in here, they would say lead-centric. I think a lot of companies want to sell to accounts, but they're very much focused on individuals. Salesforce.com by its nature tends to focus on individuals. The marketing automation platform, there's accounts in there, but it's still siloed by individuals. So I think a lot of companies really actually do lead-centric sales and marketing. We all want the accounts, but simply knowing which account you want to sell to is not account-based whatever. It's not account-based marketing. It's not account-based sales. It's just account-centric focus. But to Trish's point, I think the nirvana, and what we'll talk about here, is having a coordinated effort within the account and a coordinated effort internally between sales and marketing to more efficiently drive the target account sales that you want.
I love it. I'm going to jump into this, but I've got to ask one question that's been posed on the Q&A from Mary because I think it's very fitting here. So we've kind of thrown out some terms: account-centric, account-based, account marketing, account sales. Certainly it sounds like it should be a unified strategy. Who should be the quarterback? Who should be the person or the function that should run it? Should it really be, the steering committee, if you will, head be in marketing? Should it be more in sales development, or should it be more in sales? Trish, a quick thought on that from you?
So in real account-based, the quarterback is determined by, and I'm going to talk about this in my presentation, but it depends on how large the account you're going after is. Sometimes the quarterback might even be your CEO. Sometimes the quarterback might be your CRO. I think it really depends on the level of account you're going after and the level of coordination that's going to be required to achieve your goals with that account. So I think it's an it depends answer.
Got it. Well, I know you'll dive a little more into that, but I thought it was a fitting topic. So let's take one step back before we get into all the weeds. I want to just set the topic up. Why in the heck are we even talking about it? I got to admit, I took my first enterprise sales role almost 10 years ago, and I felt like I knew right off the bat that multiple people needed to be involved in the decision-making process, that random cold calls and mass emails didn't do the trick, and that, truthfully, personalization trumped generalization, all, I think, principles of account-based sales. So why all the hype today? Why all the talk? Certainly a decent amount of research coming out around account-based strategies. You see two studies here. One, Serious Decisions did a study, 90% of respondents saying, hey, they're looking towards it. Terminus saying 60% of survey respondents saying they're looking to really implement it. But I want to throw a quick question, one to Matt and then one to Trish again. What are some of the trends you guys are seeing as to why this is happening? What's the reason behind the push?
So
Matt, can we start with you?
Yeah, happy to. I mean, I think, this is a strategy that has been right for, for grasping the opportunity for a long time. I think, one, we have technology and data available to help us better make sense of what's happening inside an organization and adjust our communication strategy with internal peers accordingly. I also think it's becoming mandatory as a means of driving the kind of consensus building you need in large organizations to get them to make a decision. Those buyers are they're busier than ever. They're more distracted than ever. They've got a billion companies like us going after them on a regular basis. So their ability to focus on building consensus on their own, independent of your help, I believe is diminished. And so I think you lose a lot of control over whether the deal is going to get done if you don't put a proactive focus on that. So your ability to coordinate that consensus building internally, given market conditions, given the bandwidth and constraints that our buyers have internally, I think that plus the technology and data availability is really what's driving success for companies that are doing account-based now.
Interesting. Trish, what would you add?
So, I think it's just another iteration of marketing and sales, of the evolution of marketing sales, because when inbound came along, it was supposed to kill outbound. It didn't. When social came along, it was supposed to kill the phone. It didn't. Content came along, that was supposed to be, the next nirvana. Content is the new spam. So if you have a complex deal, and I personally think account-based requires a minimum ASP of $50K, but that's just a Trish Bertuzzi opinion. But how are you going to go get that when all of those other things just aren't working anymore? We've created white noise central with our buyers, and to rise above that noise, we had to get smarter. And I think this is the evolution of getting smarter. These account-based strategies, we finally sat down and go, all right, well, I guess the CEO isn't going to download a white paper, so I can't really have my SDR follow up with them. What am I going to do now? I think it's finally brought up.
What?
Yeah.
Kidding.
Yeah.
I love it. The next iteration. Okay, so that's a little bit of the why. Let's talk a little bit about what it is. I got to steal from John Miller here. I've become a fan since we talked, Trish, at our Accelerate conference. I've been this guy, whenever he does a podcast, I've read his account-based marketing book. I've become a little bit of a John Miller disciple. I love when he says account-based everything is fishing with spears and not nets. He talks a lot about the flip the funnel idea. When you start fishing with nets, and this is the old kind of model, or I think to Trish's point, the last iteration in sales, you would sit down with your team and you'd say, hey, what's our offer? What channels are we going to hit and what segments are we going to go after? As you flip that funnel, you really start with the who. What accounts are we going to go after? What message will resonate with those accounts? And then what channels can we deliver that to really resonate with our buyer? So the flip the funnel approach, and John Miller, we just did a webinar with him last week. Definitely recommend you catch that if you haven't, because I think him and Engagio are on some of the cusp of the new learnings regarding that. Now, to kind of wrap up this piece, wanted to just go one step deeper in some of the pieces I feel like make up a big part of this account-based initiative. I've thrown it up on the screen here, a unified strategy. in a multi-decision maker environment that generates revenue through personalized prospecting and value-based selling. Look, to do account-based sales the right way, it can't be done in a silo. You got to have marketing, sales, and sales development all working together in that united approach. I like to call it a game plan. The multi-decision maker environment, it's not just selling to one individual. You need to identify the decision maker, understand the circle of influence, and navigate kind of that path to that power individual. Trish, I've basically stolen this from Trish. It's got to be about revenue, and she's going to talk about this. The goal of account-based strategy needs to be more about revenue than it is around personalized emails and strategic sales development and yada, yada, yada. I love the idea of personalized prospecting. It's not about you, it's about them. It's not about automation, it's about personalization. And then lastly, I think we forget sometimes this value-based concept. Value-based selling is about making the sale about them and building consensus as a group rather than trying to sell it to one individual. Now, Matt, I'm going to hand it to you, but Trish, you hit on this. For those who are listening, is this right for you? I've put Trish's idea down here. You've gotten a relational concept or an account-based model, and then you've got a transactional or high-velocity model. Here's some of the points you might want to consider if this approach is right for you, because I think Trish and Matt would agree this isn't right for everybody. So in your buying cycle, do you have more buyers? Do you have a deal size above $50,000? Do you have a longer sales cycle? Are you working in a more strategic segment? And then lastly, sometimes you just are in a market where the customer demands more of a high touch, more of a personalized approach, and you've got to meet the buyer where they are. So with that and the understanding of what is account-based strategies, Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you as we talk about how to start thinking about the how. How do we actually implement some of this?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Before we get to this polling question, there was a great question in the Q&A that I wanted to tackle. Someone was just said, what is an account? Which is a great question because it's really easy for us to just kind of blow by that. I'd be curious what you guys think, and Trish, how you think about this. For me, an account is defined as the organization you're trying to sell to, right? I mean, like if you're doing B2B sales, a building doesn't write a check, a person does. So you're always talking to people and building consensus internally among people, but you don't want their LinkedIn profile picture on your wall as the account you closed. You want the company. So I think sometimes we use account and company synonymously, because account is the Salesforce nomenclature. But think about the logo. Think about the logo that you want on your wall as a new customer. That's how I think about accounts. So Trish, what's your thought on that?
No, I agree with you, but I also think that, if you look at IBM, you can have IBM Security, IBM Life Sciences, IBM, whatever the case may be. I think it depends on, and there's that, and by the way, Pete Pereira asked that question. Hi, Pete, haven't talked to you in years. But I think the important thing to remember is we have to get better at actually using the same terminology for talking about specific accounts. And that's one of the things we'll share later, but I do think like with Salesforce Brain, to me it's like the company or line of business you're going after. That's how I would define an account.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and especially when those bigger accounts, I think about in our neck of the woods, Microsoft. Like you probably aren't going to put the Microsoft logo up. You might be going after the server division. You might be going after Xbox. You might be going after MSN.
Exactly.
Within the organization. Hey, let's get into sales and marketing coordination, because I think this is a really key part for me of doing ABM or just AB everything right. So I'm curious for those of you on today, just a yes or no question, and even if you're kind of in the middle, that's fine too. Like, are your sales and marketing teams, are they aligned on what your account-based everything strategy is? And I won't go into sort of defining a line. I'll let you define that for yourself. But I'm curious to see where people are on this. Gabe, you asked the question earlier about, who's the quarterback of the effort, and it's a good question. I think efforts need leaders, but I also think that this, if you're doing this correctly, it becomes something that everyone is focused on. Gone are the days when marketing can sit in their corner and do their arts and crafts projects and generate the occasional lead and throw it over the wall, and gone are the days when sales could sit in their box and just say, well, we're in this on our own, and we just have to do it by ourselves. I think no matter how you're doing sales and marketing, it requires, if you want to be successful and scalable, coordinated efforts, and nowhere is that more important than account-based. So let's take a look at the results we have on this survey. Yes, no, and working on it. That's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised to see the yes in single digits. That's pretty consistent with what we've seen before. I'm thrilled to see the majority of people are working on it. Hopefully that's why you're on the event today. Hopefully you get some good feedback out of this. And for those of you that are no, hopefully that is almost ready to start working on a group as well, which is probably another reason why you're on this. Trish or Gabe, any comments on this before we keep going?
Well, Matt, I just got to say, I mean, to me that seems a little bit shocking. 8% saying yes. Is that? I mean, you kind of seemed like, well, that's just par for the course. Is that kind of what you're experiencing out in the market?
Yeah, it is. I mean, and it may seem like a low number. But if people are honest with themselves and saying, listen, do we really have a lockstep strategy that sales and marketing agree on? Do we have, it's not just saying, oh, we have common revenue goals. It's like, are you actually working together in a coordinated way to achieve those? Most companies we see are not doing that. I think sometimes if you're a tech company or working within the tech industry and with earlier startups, you might see a little higher percent of companies that are doing it. But especially you get outside of tech, this single-digit answer definitely resonates. And the other thing I would point out here for those of you that are watching this, hopefully this also, I don't mean to say it's going to make you feel better, but it's really easy. You go to events like this and you talk about sort of new things, right? I mean, account-based has been around for, a year as a concept. So it's easy to think, oh, everyone's doing it, we're behind. Hopefully this gives you confidence that, look, you're not behind. The majority of the market is still trying to figure it out the same way you are. So there's opportunity cost here to not be executing for sure. But you are not the last to engage on this, and hopefully this webinar gives you some tips on how to do it. But
hey, Matt, a quick question for you. Just while we're on the topic, we're talking about alignment. Is there a threshold where in an organization marketing and sales shouldn't be aligned or should be aligned, or is that something that any organization that has marketing and sales should be working in alignment?
Well, I would be hard-pressed to find an organization where there shouldn't be aligned. And look, I'm coming to this mostly from the marketing side. We work pretty closely with marketing and sales organizations, but, I'm a marketer, our team's marketers. We partner with great companies like Bridge Group, to help focus on improving the sales side of the equation. So as a marketer, I will be the first to say that the lack of alignment is mostly marketing's fault. Sales has always been focused on revenue. Sales is focused on closing deals that give them better commission checks. Marketing there's a reason why sometimes marketing historically has been referred to as the arts and crafts department. Marketing's focused on clicks and retweets and likes, and even MQLs really aren't sufficient. I mean, you can't buy a beer with an MQL. You can buy a beer with a closed deal. So there's a level of revenue responsibility in any organization that I want to see marketing focused on. At minimum, I want marketing's focus to be on pipeline contribution. But really, I want marketing to be paid based on closed deals. Increasingly, I'm starting to see more organizations, both newer marketing organizations as well as sort of revamped marketing organizations, put their number one focus on percent of pipe generated by marketing activities or marketing influence on closed deals. It's harder to measure those things, but it's absolutely what's required to get sales and marketing working on the same playbook. Cool. I'm going to move on, so we're going to run out of time here, so I'm going to move pretty quickly through some of these. I want to focus on 8 ways that I think ABM, the way account-based marketing integrates with your sales team to make sure this really works. The first is to make sales an early partner and collaborator. As a marketer, what I don't want to hear is a marketing person go to the sales team and say, hey, we got this great idea. I think we're going to start focusing on target accounts. That doesn't really work. If you've got a sales organization that already has a target account strategy, as a marketing organization, what I want you to do is start to learn everything you can about where they're focusing, what is their strategy, how they are approaching things. It's not going to come across as very credible if you decide to sort of reinvent the wheel and come up with a brand new strategy you expect sales to get on board with. Find out where they are, meet them there, and then start moving the ball forward. One of the examples of why this works to me is this chart by demand metric. It shows the correlation between sales and marketing teams working together and the likelihood that those organizations are hitting their number. And you can see that if you go from none to effective, right, if you are doing ineffective coordination between sales and marketing, you are still moving the needle. So even if you're just starting to get going, this is not a black or white thing. You can start to make progress, start to make incremental improvement on your numbers, even in the beginning stages of integrating efforts between sales and marketing. So number 2 is working from common objective definitions. I mean, you kind of referenced a little bit, Gabe, at the question that you asked. Way too often, sales and marketing aren't working from the same spreadsheet. Sales knows what their number is, and in most cases, sales knows the pipeline they need to generate. Marketing is not always aligned. They may give that lip service, but then marketing has an MQL goal that was not generated with the same math. It was generated through some separate whatever. It was just what they generated last year times 10% or whatever they think their budget can generate. And unless the lead volume you're coming up with aligns with the conversion rate you expect or the pipeline numbers you need, you don't have alignment of objectives. And furthermore, as I mentioned before, if sales and marketing aren't both aligned and compensated and rewarded based on hitting the number that matters, which is what you can buy a beer with, then you've also got a problem. And then further on the definition side, if you don't agree on what's a qualified lead, if you don't agree on what a qualified opportunity is, if you don't agree on who your target accounts are and why, then you can't even get off the launch pad to be successful in account base. So it's really simple to do this. I mean, this is a little bit of an eye chart. If you put your screen in full view, you're going to be able to see this a lot better. Anything in this presentation that looks like a spreadsheet is a spreadsheet. So if you want a copy of this, happy to send you a copy afterward. I'll give a copy to Gabe and the inside sales team, but happy to send you one directly as well. I mean, this is simple, right? I mean, like, how many deals do you need? How many in the pipeline do you need? How many leads do you need to get that pipeline with a common set of, average sales price and then conversion rates from lead to opportunity to close. You can make this more complicated, and I'd encourage you to at least factor in things like sales cycle length, so leads get generated well before you need the sales to close. But this is important math to start with. And then similarly, if you don't have a spreadsheet that enumerates the lead and opportunity stages, that enumerates the definition of what it means to be at those stages, but then more importantly, a lot of companies have that. They've got those definitions, the nomenclature. But I would further reinforce what is marketing's job and what is sales' job generally at each of those stages. This is a great exercise to sit down and do with your sales team. You can do it sales leadership. You can do it in a meeting. You can do it over beers. I mean, sometimes I actually think doing this, printing this out, doing this at a bar where it's a little more of a casual environment can foster the kind of relationship that you want and need with your sales organization moving forward. So number 3 for me is building and managing that target set of contacts. Who are those people? Who are the companies and why? Your target accounts may not necessarily be the biggest logos in your market. It may be a combination of logos and target accounts that are most ripe to be customers. Just because they're big doesn't mean you're going to be more likely to sell to them. It could be that you're looking for a set of early adopters that are more likely to buy. So, from a data standpoint, yeah, company, great. Who are the individuals within that company? I'd encourage you, if you're doing account-based, to think through the decision makers, the stakeholders, the influencers. What does the ecosystem of people in that organization look like that are likely to buy, that are likely to engage, that are likely to impact positively or negatively whether that deal gets through? And we're not going to spend a ton of time in this presentation talking about content development, but you've got to have a story for each of those people. As you're attempting externally to coordinate consensus building internally, the end result of that consensus building may point towards the same outcome, which is buying your product or service. But the people internally may be doing that for different reasons. So having content information is important. Making sure you've got the right message for those folks, is on top of that. And last but not least on this, from a data hygiene standpoint, if you built your lists more than 3 months ago, it's really important that you maintain those. The average B2B database deteriorates at a rate of 2 to 3% per month. There's a lot of turnover, especially if you're working in tech, or in IT. Turnover is constant, so it's really important to make sure you've got recent data. As you're executing, the real-time updates of that data becomes important as well. This includes integrating systems together. This is another problem that you see in marketing, between marketing and sales, where marketing's got Marketo, sales has Salesforce, or whatever your CRM marketing automation platforms are. Yes, there's integration, but if you have new data, if you discovered someone new in a stakeholder role, how does that not only update every database, but how does that change the way you're communicating with people? There's processes and systems you want in place to make sure that this is really tightly coordinated. Again, for me, and I think we reinforced at the beginning, account-based requires a deeper level of coordination in not just how you work between sales and marketing, but in how you communicate to the stakeholders and important people inside the organization. That is a key driver and accelerator of making account-based work. Number 4 is executing from a consolidated and engagement plan. Let me give you a quick example of this just to keep things moving. Let's say you found the right person at the right company that attended this webinar today. It's a great example of that, right? We've got a great webinar. You look through the list. You think, wow, wait, we got a couple people on that list that actually just participated in the webinar, and they're on our target account list. And I'm really, really excited that this GIF actually worked in this presentation as well. So that is fantastic. So all right, so now you got the right person at the right company. How is follow-up going to be different for that person from that company versus everyone else in the webinar? How are you going to segment them out? Who does it? Is it going to be a marketing message? Is it something the marketing sends? Is it coming from your marketing automation system? Does the BDR do it? Is it a good enough lead that you should just send it straight to field sales? Like, how are they doing that? Depending on how that person engages with that, how is that going to actually trigger how they're communicated with next from sales, from marketing? How is everybody else in that target account going to be communicated to now that you have engagement from one of the decision makers or stakeholders in that organization? So at the risk of making this sound too complicated, that level of coordination between sales and marketing from a message, from a system, from a process standpoint, all of a sudden becomes far more important. It's important not only because that's what actually drives results, but it's important because by definition when you're doing account-based, the risks are higher. You've got fewer at-bats with companies that you care about. So it is worth the time and effort to coordinate those efforts and make sure you're getting the right message, the right coordination, the right momentum with the deals that you care about. And this applies to all different types of campaigns. I mean, this is everything from we've got 150 accounts we're going after. What's the plan, the campaign we're doing for the next year? What are we doing for this webinar? What are we doing for this upcoming trade show? So it's okay to think about this in terms of those micro moments as well as the longer-term engagement. Another advantage for me as a marketer with account base is it sort of forces organizations to think longer-term about their marketing. It's not just about what are we going to put in the email next Tuesday. We go back to a more traditional and what I think is an effective idea of campaign management, which is thinking long-term about the impact you want to make on an organization. Where do you want to move them? How are you going to challenge the status quo and get them to commit to change, knowing that that's not going to happen with a single white paper, with a single webinar, with a single show. The insights you develop from those conversations, the insights that you pull out of your predictive analytics tools, the insights that you're identifying in the market, they're real trigger events and buying signals for organizations. If you've got 100 target accounts, you don't want to treat them all equally. You want to find those that actually have some interest right away. So what are some of the things that you're looking for? As you identify those buying signals, well, how are you capturing them? How do they integrate into the workflow of your sales organization? How did it change the nature of communication from sales and marketing to those individuals as well as to the account overall? But the idea here is that if you've got 100 accounts you care about, which are the 5 you should call tomorrow based on what happened today? And what does that process and sequence look like? Again, tight coordination of that message and that follow-up process really makes this much more successful. Right? The content precision, if you're interested in a content map, can help you identify themes, storylines for each stakeholder, influencer, decision maker. I'm happy to give that spreadsheet to you as well. But it's super important that you're actually improving on the precision of the right message at the right point in time for prospects. This is a universal for me for sales messaging and marketing messaging, but just sell the whole, not the drill. I mean, make sure you build a foundation of need and get a commitment to an outcome from your prospect before you move into, the act of selling, and making that personalized to the role, to the individual, to their unique worldview on the situation based on what they care about is one of the best ways to get them behind you. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into my rants on why salespeople should be creating content, but I don't think salespeople should be creating content. I think this increases the level of importance of marketing doing real good account-based, role-specific content that marketing and sales can use that is a consistent set of messages that more efficiently drive momentum in the organization. And last but not least is, using the OODA loop. This is a military tactic of observe, orient, decide, and act. Your ability to execute internally. Look, I mean, this is new. If anyone tells you they're an account-based marketing expert, they're a liar because this doesn't exist. I mean, the way we're talking about today, this is a fairly new concept. And so, the dirty little secret is we're all kind of making it up as we go. But I think, internally, know that the path to innovation and success sometimes is paved with failure, with missteps. But your ability to be agile, your ability to quickly adjust to what's working and what's not, to be vulnerable to that feedback, good and bad, that can help make the overall efforts better, is going to make you more successful. So with that, Trish, I'm going to pass it right back to you.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Lots of content there, so hope everyone downloads the slides. So I want to talk to you about our take on account-based, and we literally have gone out and trademarked account-based revenue, because when people talk about account-based marketing, account-based sales development, account-based everything, I'm like, what are you people doing? The only thing that matters is revenue. And how do you get to revenue? Well, to get to revenue, you got to do the math, right? So what I'm going to talk to you today is about why math matters. And what I really mean by math is deciding which accounts we mean when we say account-based. How much spend and effort will we put in to earn how much revenue? It's math. None of us love math, or most of us don't love math, but for the 92% of you that are listening that say you're still figuring this out, I hope you'll do your math. So what kind of got me thinking about math was that I would go into our clients and I would say, okay, you're ready to do account-based. So how'd you come up with your list? And like most of you, they came up with their list by going to the field and getting the names of accounts. And when we started to take a deep dive into those accounts, what we found that most were dissimilar instead of similar. And when you build an account-based strategy, you really need a cohesive strategy that uses marketing and messaging and sales resource and sales development in a cohesive fashion. You can't do that if you're using, if your target looks like a shotgun blast, right? So what I want all of you to take back with you today is this acronym. It's STEM, and it stands for Strategic, Target, Enterprise, and Mid-Market. So whenever you're talking to someone about account-based, sort of grab this pyramid and say, what kind of accounts are we talking about? So let me see if I can paint you a picture. And we're not going to talk about the SMB. But for most people, the mid-market means a big section of the market they're targeting. There's hundreds of thousands of accounts. And let's say they look like, for an example, this company, HomeAway. Next, we have enterprise accounts. And we'll use KB Homes as an example there. And that has tens of thousands of accounts in it. Then we have target accounts. Let's say HBO is a target account. And there might be 1,000 companies that fall under the sort of same category as HBO. And then finally, strategic. Let's say there's 100 accounts that are super strategic for you for one reason or another. And in this instance, we're going to use Home Depot. So we've laid out the pyramid, and we've laid out STEM, and we kind of know which accounts fall into each category. So how do we do the math? So the math falls into three sort of pillars. The first is spend, meaning how much am I going to spend on marketing, and some people also include sales in their spend, to get this account. Next pillar is coordination. So how much effort is it going to take within our organization to close this account? The final pillar is deal size. So in a mid-market account, you might have one-time spend, one times coordination to get one times your deal size. But if you go up the food chain and you go to your enterprise accounts, you might have to spend 3 times more, exert twice the amount of coordination to get 3 times the deal size. You go to your target account. All right, so now we're seeing real growth. We're seeing real growth in both cost and return. And then finally, strategic accounts. They are so much larger in deal size, cost, and complexity that they have to warrant that much larger return on investment. So here's the thing. When you're talking about accounts, it's not about the glitz and the glamour of landing that account that might be in your best reps territory. You need to do the math to really figure out, well, wait, where are we going to spend it? Where do we want our revenue to come from? Do we want our revenue to come from those 100 accounts, those 1,000 accounts, those tens of thousands of accounts? Where do we want our revenue to come from? The bulk of our revenue. Because once you understand that, then you can start making decisions about anticipated deal size, what percentage of your budget are you going to put into spend, and who are the players that you're going to have to pull in for that level of coordination. So to kind of just wrap it up, this is all why the math matters. You can't just take the Fortune 500 list and bam, we're account-based, baby. It just doesn't work that way. You have to do the math to figure out what accounts have the potential to yield that deal size you want, and it's different for everyone in this room. So what I hope you'll do is when you're starting to figure this out, that you grab a matrix that looks something like this. You grab the STEM pyramid to use a common language to talk about accounts, and you grab a matrix like this and really start figuring it out. Because if you don't, you're executing an account-centric strategy and not account-based. That's why math matters.
Awesome.
And that's all I have to say.
Appreciate it, Trish. Yeah, no, good. So we talked about the why, we got a little bit of the how of integrating sales and marketing, and then Trish has wrapped this up here with really focusing on the numbers. As you think about this strategy, how do you tier it out into your STEM model so that you can know the spend and the collaboration on each type of account you're going after? So that'll wrap it up for today. Throw some questions if you'd like into the Q&A section. We'll review those here in just a minute as we get to the end of our session today. Tomorrow we will email you a link to today's recorded webinar. Feel free to share it with colleagues or friends. There are resources available. You can jump and see our last week's webinar with John Miller on some of his thoughts on account-based. We've got a sales process cheat sheet. So feel free to dive into those, and I think you'll get some real good learnings from that as well. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. We'll take those for a few minutes here and then let our esteemed guests head back to their regular job. Again, use that Q&A section, and then I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't moderate some of those. So one of the questions, I'm going to wait for a couple to come in here. Looks like we've got one from Tony. This one's kind of interesting. It talks specifically about, and maybe Trish, you could start here because you talked a little bit about account identification. Can you give a 30-second or a 3-step quick process as to how you should actually identify accounts? Do you just go out to Dun & Bradstreet and choose the biggest ones, or where would you advise somebody to start as you identify accounts?
Well, I mean, I think I just talked about that a little bit. I think you have to sit down as an organization and say, where do we want our revenue to come from? Because, you know, unless your deal size is consistently over $50,000, you might have multiple strategies in play. You know, demand generation, inbound, other strategies are not going away. If you're still going to sell into the SMB and the mid-market, the proven true strategies are still in play. But if you're going to get into account-based, even if it's just for a subsection of what you're going after, you know, you have to be able to identify how much of our revenue is going to come from there. because you need to understand that to work backwards to build out the math that I've been talking about.
Perfect. Okay, Matt, here's one for you. It's coming from Meredith. If your sales team doesn't have a dedicated inside salesperson, how can marketing help sales fill that gap using Salesforce and automated marketing in this type of approach?
It's a great question. I think that the more complicated the message, the more complex the sale, the more you need people on the phone that can have those conversations. So, expecting that, look, as much as I love what marketing automation can do and what drip campaigns can do in an automated fashion, I think it pales in comparison to be able to have that live qualifying call that really does a reframe, that can customize the message in real time for a prospect. So, if your sales team does not have an inside sales organization that can do that, as a marketer, you might consider getting that role for yourself. Increasingly, I'm seeing marketers actually manage either an inside sales team, a lead qualification team, or an outsourced team that are following up with leads and having conversations to understand where prospects are to move them forward. That doing that in an outsourced way gets a lot more complicated if you're doing true integrated account base. But, if you're a marketer and you own SQLs, if you own pipeline contribution, it stands to reason that the lead qualification element might be something you want to own and manage as well. Now, easier said than done. We could spend a whole other 45 minutes talking about, how marketers can best manage what is really still a sales function. But increasingly, we're seeing, marketers do that because they're focused on metrics that are a lot closer to the bottom of the funnel.
Love it. More questions coming in here. I want to try to tackle them. Trish, one for you. This comes from Tim. You talked about collaboration. Can you give an example of how somewhere maybe in that stem, you can choose one, how a sales development rep might appropriately collaborate with a sales or account executive to run this type of approach or strategy?
So they can't. That's account-centric. So if it's entirely left up to the SDR and the AE, that's account-centric selling. And that's fine if that's the way that they choose to approach their market. But, then it's a matter of picking out certain accounts where, we're two people and we're going to go after them. I'll go high, you go low. We'll see what we can pull together. But account-based
interesting.
is sort of bigger than that. So I'm going to get back to the difference between account-centric and account-based. I think smart SDRs do, at the very minimal, have conversations about account-centric strategies with the AEs they're partnered with.
So a follow-up to that, this is from Sanjeev. He mentions account-based versus account-centric, and then he throws this out. Do you see the next level to be buyer-centric? And then he throws out an example here. We expect $1 million from VP of App Dev of Coca-Cola, and hence our strategy for Coke. VP App Dev needs to be XYZ. I don't know if that makes sense. Do you feel like there's a next evolution in the eccentric base to maybe a buyer-centric concept?
Here's the thing, though. The buyer doesn't do the deal. Coca-Cola does the deal. The buyer, you're never going to get a VP of App Dev. Well, I should say never. I take that back. I would be hard-pressed to believe that a VP of App Dev of Coca-Cola could spend $1 million and not have recommenders, influencers, buying committees, IT involved, you name it. That makes it account-based, the fact that you're going after Coca-Cola. And yes, the VP of App Dev is one of the buyers you're talking to, but there's a whole lot of other people that are going to be involved in that buying decision, and that's what takes it to account-based. Having said that, I think that Sanjeev does make a good point in that if you're going to execute account-based and you're going after the VP of App Dev, you better know what their job is, what challenges do they face, how are they currently addressing those challenges, and how can you add value to them. So buyer-based content and messaging and intimacy, buyer-based intimacy is a critical component.
Is a critical component of an account-based strategy. Got it.
Exactly, yeah.
Matt, you're around this all the time. Nancy's asking a question here about automation, right? And you talked about technology a little bit as one of the trends, is why we're seeing some of this. Where do you find that balance? I mean, you got a lot of tools in the marketing side, certainly in the sales side. They allow you to do these fake the personalization. You can schedule emails. You can, have them show up in a different way in your inbox. How do you balance personalization and automation in all of this?
It's a great question. I think, when you're first engaging with our accounts, if you can identify those different segments of stakeholders, decision makers, influencers, and segment the messages you want to put in front of them, certainly I think marketing automation and drip campaigns to that audience can work. I think, once people engage with some content, you can certainly, have your marketing automation system change type of content, change level of content, change frequency. But I think you have to be careful automating too much in an account-based model because of how important those individual conversations are. And Trish, I think, one of the slides she has her talking about the different levels of who you're targeting, the personalization of how you're executing to those organizations gets to the point where, it's the number of people you're engaging in those subsegments might make the automation component less important. That said, when you're doing account-based and you're coordinating efforts across an organization, technology is critical to ensure that everybody knows what's happening with everybody in the account, that you are adjusting communication with other people in the account based on momentum you have with one of those stakeholders. So again, I don't think it's about automation versus predictive intelligence versus whatever other tool. Technology is not your strategy. Technology is an implementer of your strategy. I would certainly start with who's your market, who are you going after, what are the people you care about, what is the sales, what is the integrated sales and marketing process going to look like, how does technology support and scale that in an effective, predictable way. Think about it that way versus trying to figure out which technology tools can be applied to accounting.
Got it. Love it. There's so many other things and a lot of things I want to actually ask myself, but we'll have to get to those a little bit later. I've got a friend here who's asked a question, Michael, coming from Market Source. And Michael, you might need to kind of repeat this if I'm not getting it right, but he's asking you, Matt, the recommended percentage of the sales pipeline marketing should accept as an SLA. So maybe in an account-based model, is there something specific that marketing should, from a percentage standpoint, be responsible for, or do you not look at it that way anymore?
Yeah, it's a great question, and my initial response is I really don't look at it that way anymore. Historically, marketing owns the top, sales owns the bottom. Historically, marketing owns some kind of a quote-unquote handoff at an MQL or SQL level. But what I see now is a blended picture across every stage. I see marketing doing an awful lot of work to build awareness and interest and engagement, but in account base, you've got sales doing that as well. I see sales really driving deals through to close, but I see marketing playing a big role in creating content that helps prospects justify the decision, complete internal consensus building, and get the deal across the line. So this is another reason why I think having common objectives tied to the closed deals, tied to the revenue event, tied to a metric that lets you buy beer, I think that's more important. And knowing that if you're doing this right, there is tight coordination at every stage of the buying journey between sales and marketing.
Oh, God, interesting. Trish, a couple that are coming your way. One is around, well, let's get to technologies in just a minute. I want to talk to this one about cadence. In your book, you talk a little bit about building a cadence strategy, obviously more focused on sales development reps. A lot of people talking about these physical gifts, these unique ways that we touch our accounts. It's a signed football by Joe Montana. It's pizza to the sales team. Do you feel like, is that going to be part of a approach strategy in the overall cadence model of the account-based approach, or where does physical gifts fit into the mantra of account-based sales?
I think the answer is it depends. That's part of your spend, right? So sign football like Joe Montana. I mean, obviously, you want to have it be extremely targeted. And by the way, I want one of those. So I think it depends. I mean, one of the things that is proven, though, is that physical, it doesn't necessarily have to be a gift, but physical delivery of something is making a comeback. You know, the thing about, you have to step out, or no, let me put it this way. You need to do pattern interrupt to rise above the noise of everyone else's selling strategies. And sometimes a physical, something people can hold and touch will allow you to do that.
Yeah, it's just about that differentiation. Okay, we'll close with this question on technology. So Peter, Trish, sounds like this is one of your old friends. Yep. Maybe we'll let you start. Yep. But Peter asks and says, hey, how well does Matt and Trish feel about existing technologies and how they're supporting the account-based model? Are there any go-tos that you would maybe recommend to make this a more impactful initiative?
Yeah, so I'm actually holding a piece in my hand that I recommend everyone go find. It's by Engagio, and it's called the Account-Based Everything Market Map, and it breaks the technologies into the different sections of an account-based strategy that it supports, going from selection to contacts to insights to personalization, all the way through to analytics, and it literally sticks the technologies into the right categories, and this is like my go-to piece now.
I love it. That is a good one, and maybe we'll see if we can't get a link in our documents to that. Matt, closing kind of remarks or an answer to that. I mean, where's your go-to on some of these technologies?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would reiterate just how valuable that Engagio ABM framework is. Just lots of good insights, not only in terms of vendors that can help you, but also the categories of technology that help. I'll just continue to give the caveat, though. You know, just don't let the tail wag the dog, right? I mean, don't focus on technology for technology's sake. Don't start with thinking about your tech plan. Develop your account-based strategy between sales and marketing first. Figure out what that process looks like for your organization, for your culture, for your industry, for your target account, and then decide which of those components are going to need to be streamlined, to be managed in a more automated way. You may find that there's things you want to do in the skunkworks way first to develop proof of concept and then invest in technology. Technology exists so that robots can do more efficiently, more seamlessly, more predictably what humans could have done or used to do. Don't be afraid to use humans to do it to start. If that's part of your strategy, and then when you see that it works, then go and get the technology that can expand that. So, but I think a good starting point, I think Engagio, I do believe is going to be a platform that really drives account-based for a lot of companies moving forward. I think they've done a really nice job of giving a sense of the landscape. So I'd reiterate to start there.
Perfect. Okay. Well, as we wrap this up, I'll make a plug there for InsideSales.com as well. 3 key tools that can really help you in your account-based strategy are predictive analytics. As you look to identify accounts, which accounts are best, which ones are most likely to buy from you. We've got a tool coming out called Playbooks, and it's going to really focus on a more strategic game plan that is enabled by a cadence strategy that really aligns with this type of model. And then lastly, let's not forget that bottom of the funnel approach when you think about value-based selling. Our pipeline management tool called HD Forecast can really help you build consensus and know how to move people through that funnel faster. So we will be offended, both Trish, myself, and Matt, if you do not connect with us on LinkedIn, if you do not continue the conversation on Twitter. But I got to say thanks so much, Trish, for joining, and Matt, it was fantastic. Everybody have a great day. We're going to sign off.
Thanks so much.